welcome to the Leah Noel Design Co. YouTube channel. I am Leah and I am a furniture painter. And today we're gonna do an artistic finish on this buffet. And my goal is to make it look like a faded pair of blue jeans. Now, disclaimer, I am just getting started in the creative process. So even in my head, I want this to look like a faded pair of blue jeans. It may or may not go that direction. So I'm gonna take you along the journey of just the creative process with me and show you some blending techniques, some layering techniques, and showing you how to put some colors together. So before we get started, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a rundown of all the supplies that I have laid out to begin this project so far. Okay, so let's take a quick minute to talk about what I've done so far. So what I have done so far is I have cleaned this piece. I cleaned it with White Lightning. I cleaned it really well and then I rinsed it. And then after that, I gave it 2 coats of B.O.S, which stands for Blocks Odor and Stops Bleed Through. Because this is an older piece, so I felt like it needed a little bit of a primer just to make sure that no tannins seep through the finish. And then I gave it 2 coats of Dusty Blue, which you see here, and I did it all with my sprayer. I use an Apollo HVLP. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give you a rundown of the supplies I have laid out to just get started. So just so you know, I have an idea in my head and this kind of correlates with it. I have no idea if this is the direction I'll go, but this is kind of where I start. So first I start with a lot of brushes because I know that when I'm blending, I'm gonna use a lot of brushes. I have a spray mister and a flat round brush. This is the Best Dang Wax brush from Dixie Belle, and I use that a lot for blending. And then I have just a towel. I use a pair of my daughter's like old clothes just to wipe my brushes on to keep them clean. And then here we have my browns. I chose Putty, Pinecone, and Blue, and Stormy Seas. I have Blueberry and Haint Blue for my lighter blues. I pull out a little bit of white because you never know when you're gonna need to tone something down. I'm kind of thinking this might look like an old pair of blue jeans with a lot of like, I think I'm gonna do a lot of browns. So that is the vision I have so far. I just kind of want faded blue in the center, a little bit darker around the edges. Kind of a simple finish, but it's gonna have lots of colors and lots of layers to just give it a ton of depth. So let's get started. So we have a flat, larger space right here that doesn't have as much decoration on it. And I'm gonna do a little bit of a blended look for that contrast again. So I'm gonna start by misting my side right here. And then I'm gonna take the same brush I've been using. I've only pulled out 2 brushes and 1 dry one so far. And I still barely have any paint on here. And I'm gonna start with the Paint Blue. And I actually have a little bit more on my brush. I'm gonna wipe a little off. So I have about this much on my brush. And I'm using just a little bit of paint for the blending. The reason I like to use a little bit is I can always add more, and I still want to see some of this blue coming through. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of blueberry, okay? And the blueberry is just to create a little contrast. I'm only gonna really add it on this side, and then I'll carry it over like this. But I want this side to just be a little darker. Okay, so I have a good white square right here. I'm gonna go ahead and come in with my latte and my putty, and I'm just kind of have them mixed on the brush. I'm gonna wipe it off a little, so I just have a little bit. And kind of the same thing, I'm just gonna mist, and then I'm gonna almost frame it out like this. And as I'm doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and dry brush and add a little pine cone So I'm gonna spray the water to keep my paint going fluid. Just kind of keep it wet. And I like to do these little circle-y motions. And this just kind of blends it to where it's kind of like, you know, kind of varied. I'm not looking for that perfect symmetrical blend, really ever. And then once I do that, I just kind of straighten out my paint a little bit. But we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for layers. We're looking for contrast. Contrast and layers. That's pretty much what we're doing here today. And we've achieved it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and around these edges, I'm gonna start my dry brushing process again, starting with the white and Haint blue. And just go ahead. And then I'm gonna carry it into the, oh, I got way too much right there. When you make a mistake like this, wipes are the best thing ever. Just wipe it back a little, especially with this kind of look. So fun. Okay, so I had too much paint on my brush. No big deal. I'm gonna actually start down here and clean my brush. So this is kind of what I was doing in the video before, just cleaning my brush off down here because there's a little more texture to kind of hit it on and it's lower. And then kind of coming up through here where your eye is gonna see it more. And you get this perfect amount of paint on your brush and you can kind of see just how that's going on. And it's not, you know, it's not globby, it's not too thick, it's just perfect. It's like the perfect amount of paint. And you can, and when you get the perfect amount of paint on your brush, you know it. You'll know it. So I'm kind of smushing it in, getting some of that paint out of the center of my brush. I love these brushes because they wear in really, really nice. In fact, I like my older ones more than I like my newer ones. See, this is an older brush and this is a newer one, and you can kind of see how I've like fanned it out and it's kind of gotten a little crazy over the years. And then this one has so much flexibility in it. It still is great, but I love my old worn brushes. Okay, so that's the white, and then we'll go in with the browns again. Pine cone, latte putty, just pretty much no particular order. I'm gonna start down here. To kind of wipe it off. I got way too much on here, but that's okay. Sometimes you can hide some of, like when you get a little bit too much on, I either wipe it back, or a lot of times if it's not too bad, I'll just hide it in the next layer, right? So like if I have a spot where it's like, oh, it is so obvious you pulled your brush across right there, I just go back later and then go over it with a little white in one of the spots. A little putty, a little bit of putty, a little darker on my corners. Whenever I'm trying to clean my brush off, I'm going towards my corners, towards the bottom, anywhere where there's like texture where it's going to catch on a ledge. That's pretty much where I want to start to clean my brush. And then through here where it's more flat, this is where I don't want as much paint on my brush. This is like the sweet spot for right here, because you don't want, you know, you don't want that brushed look. Right here you want it a little more faded and a little heavier in your corners. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through one more time, one more process of this layering, and then we'll see what the next step is. I don't even know what it's gonna be yet, but it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be cool, and it's gonna look awesome. All right, so we are totally dry brushed. I'm gonna go into some darker colors now, using one of the same brushes. I'm gonna use the brown brush, and I'm just gonna wipe it off with an old shirt here. I changed out my rags. That's why I really like to use like my daughter's old clothes that are too worn out, you know, to really donate. I like to use them because I just toss them after, and I like to keep a clean rag going. So I have here collard greens and gravel road. I'm gonna start with collard greens. Collard greens is not a color I've used too much, but it's really a nice green. I'm gonna just get a little on my brush and I'm just gonna kind of come in on the corners. And this is gonna start helping the colors just kind of have a little more contrast. We just want so much contrast going on. Then come back through here. And when that happens, I just mist it with a little water. I don't always want to use my brush because I want to keep my brush pretty dry. And just wipe it with like a shirt or a wet wipe, shirt. At this point, whatever you can grab. And I think we'll hit it again with pine cone before we're done. But again, this is my light color, so I'm just gonna keep adding the dry brushed texture throughout. In through here. Hey, so we have put clear coat over this buffet. Your sheen really doesn't matter. I use satin most of the time, but I just put a coat of clear coat over this buffet so that my glaze doesn't just immediately absorb into my chalk paint. Now, I just applied one coat, so I can still feel that it's a little bit matte feeling, which is kind of what I want, but just one coat of clear coat is all you need. And then I went ahead and put my glaze in my little bowl here, and I have a car wash sponge that I chopped up. I like the ones from Walmart, and I cut it up. And I'm just gonna go ahead and glaze this. And then my reason for glazing is I want it to be a little bit lighter. I want kind of the whole piece to be a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go in, and I'm gonna glaze, and this is gonna add dimension, and it's also just gonna kind of lighten everything up. And I'm gonna get it inside all the crevices. As I'm getting it inside the crevices, that's really what's gonna lighten the piece up. And then the rest of it is gonna kind of just be just lightened a little bit, and we're still gonna see our contrast. So I'm gonna use a brush for two reasons. So I'm gonna use a brush to get my glaze in these little pieces here on the corner. And then I'm actually gonna use a clean brush to wipe some of it away. But I really want this mostly on my edges, so I'm gonna paint my glaze on a little bit too. So I'm applied. I left the blue up here. I'm gonna use my sponge first to kind of take some back. I might use a wet wipe, and I'm also gonna use a clean paint brush as well to just pull the glaze back. So here, I'm just using a really small amount because I still want to see my blue underneath there. And I'm just gonna continue to pull it back until I like the way it looks. I'm just gonna take it off and apply more in spots where it needs it and take it off where it doesn't. All right, it is time to add the Dixie Dirt. This is the part where this piece is gonna go from, okay, that's cool, to, oh my goodness, that has some depth. So I have clear wax here, and I have a chip brush that I cut the top off of. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to apply the clear wax on this door frame everywhere that I want my Dixie Dirt to fall, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and go in all of my crevices. I'm gonna go up here. I'm gonna kind of hit the spots where it would naturally build up with dirt. Okay, so I have applied wax everywhere where I think it would naturally build up with dirt. I'm gonna go ahead and use my rag here just to kind of rub some of the areas to make it look a little bit more organic. So like right here, I'm just gonna remove a little bit of the wax, kind of gonna wipe my tops, and I'm gonna wipe back these spots that I want them to stay a little bit more blue, and then these centers here. So not much. And next, I'm gonna take my Dixie Dirt. Charcoal is my favorite because it shows up the most. We also have ash and earth, but I'm usually drawn to charcoal. A little jar like this lasts you a really long time, and you're gonna see how much depth it creates right now. That is really worth it. It's a really cost-efficient way to get some depth. Also, if you've ever heard of powder glaze, this is a much easier way and also more controlled way to kind of get the same look. So it's really a cool process. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take this chip brush, and I'm gonna apply my Dixie Dirt to my highest spots first and kind of let it fall. And as I do this, I'll notice all the places that I missed my Dixie Dirt. It does make a mess. And I'm just gonna brush it on. And then I kind of start pulling some from the bottom here, just to kind of pick it back up. And the Dixie Dirt is gonna stick everywhere where I applied my wax. Now, as I'm doing this, I can see that there are some places I forgot to apply my wax, so I can just go back in later and apply my wax. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just take my rag and I'm gonna wipe back some of this Dixie Dirt, just like this. So I'm just gonna wipe back the areas that I don't want the dirt on, and I'm gonna push it in a little bit more as well. Okay, so now that I kind of have It wiped back a little bit. I'm gonna take my wax, my clear wax, and I'm just gonna use it as an eraser, and I'm gonna pull a little bit off in some of the areas where I don't want so much. All right, guys, we have this totally done with our waxes, with our Dixie Dirt, and I'm just coming in with a little bit of mousse, gemstone mousse in gold, and I did the legs. I'll give you a peek. The legs are done, and now I'm just kind of touching the edge of my artist brush. I have a little artist brush here, and I'm just touching the edges with it. So I don't want too much. I want just a little bit of shine on my door. So I'm just gonna go very slow. And the reason I'm using the mousse is because these little details here, and these lower ones like right here, they're a lot easier to paint with the mousse, and a lot more, the mousse is a lot more forgiving than the gilding wax. And the mousse also, I'm gonna be spraying a top coat on this. I'm gonna spray Gator Hide over the entire top. So I do prefer to spray seal my mousse. Sometimes it can move, but that's kind of what makes it a great product, is that if I didn't like the way this looked, I could wipe it off. So I do like to seal my mousse with a spray sealer. You see, I'm just gonna touch all these edges.